Hi everybody, welcome back to A Moment with Marta. So today I want to talk about treating people with autism and really any other disabilities for that matter with dignity and respect. A lot of times people with autism, especially if they're not as verbal, like my son for example, get underestimated, get talked down to, get talked about in front of them. And it's easy to do even as a parent. It's easy to think about them as, because they're not as vocal as their neurotypical peers, it's easy to have a habit of maybe treating them younger than they are, but it's really insulting. My son, for example, is 9, and he hates when people talk about him. Even when they're sharing something good, he doesn't like it when his teachers are sharing something with me that's positive. He doesn't like it if I'm updating my husband about how the day went, even if it's good. Most of us don't want somebody talking about us, especially in a negative way. So one thing that I suggest for parents and caregivers is just to be cognizant of when you're talking with doctors and therapists. Include your child in the plan. Don't talk about them in front of them. Try to include them as much as possible, even if they're not contributing in, a whole meaningful way. It's the whole, you're inviting somebody, and even if they choose to decline, that's their choice. So, for education, include them in their educational plan. For therapy, include them in their therapy plan. And don't talk with a therapist like they're not there. It's insulting. Nobody would like it. And most people feel insulted and disrespected by that. So that's one recommendation that I have, and that's just based on my own observations of my son. And again, he gets upset even when I'm sharing positive things. So I always try to talk with people about being mindful of that. Also, if your child or an individual is more limited verbally, it does not mean that they're limited in a mental capacity. So for example, my son in public school a couple of years ago was being given the lowest level reader possible, which to him was insulting. He was in 2nd grade and he was being given the very beginning kindergarten reading material, and it was boring. I didn't blame him for not wanting to do it. I didn't blame him for having some negative reactions to it, because he was 8 years old and he was being given 5 and 6-year-old material and stuff that he already knew. But the problem was, the idea was the school was trying to work on comprehension. And I get that. That was something that we definitely need to work on. But instead of holding him back and penalizing him for not being able to verbalize comprehension questions, what they could have done was think outside the box and allow him to be able to show what he knows, and allowing him to have books that would allow him to grow and stretch where he was strong. Another thing that a lot of times people do, kind of like when somebody is learning English as their second language, people have a funny habit of yelling when they're speaking with people that don't understand the language. And there's nothing wrong with their ears, but for some reason, the human nature just automatically does that to try to, convey their point. It's like, it doesn't matter how loud you make your point, it's still not going to be understood because it's in a different language. And the same is true for people on the spectrum. You know, in their head, they might very well be answering the questions, or maybe they don't see the point to the question, or maybe they just aren't able to recall the words they need to say out loud at the right time. But it's very insulting to them to talk down to them, like, you know, talking to a 13-year-old like they're 2 years old, just simply because they're verbally not able to communicate the way a neurotypical 13-year-old would. So just always be mindful of ways to show them dignity and respect in any way that you're communicating with them or working with them, whether you're a parent, a caregiver, a teacher, or just a member of the community. Something else that I always like to point out when I'm going and reading, this book is really awesome. It's called All My Stripes. It's a story for children with autism, and it's by Shana Rudolph and Danielle Royer. And it's about a little boy named Zane. He's a zebra. And the point of the story is that he's a zebra made up of many stripes. He has an autism stripe, but that doesn't define who he is. Just no more than me wearing glasses defines who I am. So when I go into a classroom and I'm talking with students to help them understand more about autism, I say, hey, you know, I don't walk into a room and say, I'm no good at sports, or I wear glasses. That doesn't define who I am. I introduce myself and I say my name, and I'm made up of many different levels and layers and stripes, as it were. And that's basically what the point of the book is not only does he have an autism stripe, he has a caring stripe where he cares very deeply for his friends. He has an honesty stripe. He never tells a lie. He has a pilot stripe. He's very good at navigating, you know, areas when other people might be lost. He has an incredible memory. He has a hunger for knowledge. So just like anybody, we're not black and white. We're not two-dimensional beings. We're three-dimensional, and we are made up of all these different layers that make us who we are, our strengths and our weaknesses alike. And so just be mindful of that as you're navigating relationships with people on the spectrum, whether they're your child, your grandchild, whether they're a student or just a member of the community. Anyway, until next time with A Moment with Marta. Bye.